Welcome back to Get Paid for Your Pad. My guest today is Tom Lyons. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Casaco, which is a one of the larger short-term rental property management companies in the US for sure, even worldwide. Pretty large, 7,500 units, and we're going to talk about revenue management specifically, like how do you manage revenue on a large portfolio like that. So, Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jasper. Really appreciate being here. Looking forward to having a really good discussion, and hopefully we can have some really good take home, for your listeners for sure.
I have no doubt. I spied on your LinkedIn, and I noticed you've been in the hospitality industries
Oh
for 25 to 30 years. It looks like
yeah,
so. Yeah, wouldn't you give us a quick background and tell us
sure,
about
absolutely,
Casaco as
yeah.
well?
So long time. I'm dating my age. I've been around, over 25, almost 30 years. Was with W Hotels, started their brand with revenue management. Went from there to Hilton, and then along the way went to a larger hotel management company. Oversaw was our vice president of sales and revenue. Oversaw our revenue for all our properties. We had Hiltons, Marriott's, Starwood Properties. We had all these brands. So I was able to take the best of both worlds from all of them and implement my own processes and strategies, which was great. So learned a lot with Hilton. They're really, we at the time we thought we were the number one in revenue management. Greg Cross was the head of revenue management there, so he's kind of the older godfather of revenue, but a lot of different strategies and stuff that we're able to, even today, implement and do as new processes.
Hmm. So that's interesting. So you were managing revenue for larger hotels, and now you're managing for a short-term rental company, right?
Sure.
What are the differences between managing revenue for a hotel versus like
Yeah.
a short-term rental?
Sure. It's a whole different. In a lot of ways it's the same, but there is a different processes and everything. When I started in revenue in the hotel industry, really the airline industry were the first ones to start revenue management. The hotels started adapting it back in the late 90s, like 95, 96 area, where revenue management started to be implemented in hotels. Uh, Even then, a hotel would have a front desk manager, some maybe a front desk clerk or the GM of a smaller property doing all the revenue management, doing all the what they thought was revenue management. They might, at one time, a long time ago, people would drive around and look for how many cars were in the parking lot for a hotel to see what their occupancy was. Believe it or not. They start like shopping rates for competitors, etc. And as the industry and the hotel industry grew for revenue management, more and more they were hiring revenue managers, for each property. And pretty much today, there's probably not a property that doesn't have some type of revenue management person or experience. Now, I've been with Casago over 4 years now, and when I came on board, I really wasn't. I was kind of like a lot of your listeners. I had a few Airbnb properties we owned in Scottsdale, Arizona. We were very successful in it. I was having a blast. We're one of the probably the top properties in all of Scottsdale at the time, and I loved vacation rentals because it was so different than hotels when it came to strategies, processes, and everything. Hotels were great, but it's very competitive, right? And I thought I could bring a lot of those strategies and processes to the vacation rental industry. There's a big conference in our business called VRMA. When I started 4 years ago, they had the big VRMA conference, and there's just one or two sessions at most on revenue management. While today, there's a whole conference now from VRMA on revenue management. So I knew how much it played a pivotal role because we were so big on innovative strategies, new processes, finding new money, revenue, because opportunity revenue is hard to find, right? You don't define it. You can see it on like a budget or expenses. You got P&L, et cetera. But how much opportunity revenue can you win or lose? And being the best, trying to be the best that you can be at your business, coming up with different strategies and processes that would increase revenue was something I loved. And we were able, when I started with Costco, we really didn't have a lot of processes and strategies and all that stuff. So, I made a commitment to our CEO. I said, hey, I'll grow your revenue 30, 40% within the first year. He was no way you could do that. Maybe 15%, maybe 10%. That would be even awesome. And, then you calculate what the percentages to the revenue. Well, of course, we grew like 30, 40% at each location. So he understood that revenue management played a real pivotal role in the success of his business. And then more and more companies today, small and large, even if you're 5, 10 properties or even less, people are understanding the pivotal role revenue management plays. You can't really just set it and forget it. You have to have great strategies, processes, and great way of analyzing data.
Can you explain? You mentioned the term opportunity revenue. What does that mean exactly?
That's a great question. Okay. So opportunity revenue is no one knows it. So if you report to a boss or a manager or someone in the hotel or vacation rental industry, they're not going to understand that you could have made X, right? Our way of succeeding, the old school way is, and you hear this still today, is, hey, did you increase revenue year over year? How much revenue did you increase year over year? Which is always a good sign, what you're doing. But what if it's a downturn economy when you're not increasing revenue, you're kind of decreasing? Well, that opportunity revenue is what your competitors doing. How much revenue are they doing? How much occupancy are they doing? Now, us being a large company, we can really get that data. We look at all the different management companies, some self-renting renters that are out there, and we compare us, each destination, and we have over 55 destinations. Each destination we can compare, like what the hotel industry does, which is called a STAR report, Smith Travel Research, that compares you to other hotels if you're in the hotel business. Now, with the other hotels, that plays a huge role in what we call RevPAR. And some of your listeners probably understand RevPAR, but revenue per available room. We call it, in our industry, we can call it RevPAR, or we can call it RevPAR, revenue per available unit. So they come hand in hand. And in the hotel business, RevPAR is what we call 100% penetration index, which means if you did $100 per revenue unit per day, and your competition did $100, then you're getting 100% share. If you're doing 110%, you're getting higher than them, 10% more, which is great. Now, if you're doing 90%, hey, you're making last year numbers. Well, you're not doing as well. So in our business, we have an opportunity to really look at, our competition, what they're doing. And we like to always be around the 120s, 130s in RevPAR index. I challenge my team always, because of our strategies, processes that we come up with, innovative ways of revenue managing, that we always should be higher than them, unless we have inferior products. Now, for someone that has maybe not that technology and might only have 2 or 3 properties or something like that, I would really encourage them to come up with maybe comp sets, okay? And you probably have talked about this in the past, but we really drill down on competitors, right? Comp sets. We look at similar amenities, location, pictures. You don't really have to worry about too much walking a property or seeing what it looks like. It's all about the pictures, because That's what the guest is going to see. And that's the guest making the decision because of that. So you can compare apples to apples. Now, for people without this technology can really go online, search for their property, see what comes up in impressions. The same similar properties usually would come up, and then you would simple way, you'd like them, heart them, whatever, put in your favorites, and then look at their occupancy on a given monthly basis. How many days are full. Now there could be owner blocks. It might not be as strategic as what we're doing, but then compare your occupancy to them. So that's a kind of a good way of doing some type of opportunity revenue, and that'll guide you to say, wow, they're on 30 days, they're occupied 80%, I'm occupied 60%. Maybe my rates are too high on some of these dates. And then of course you can search your competitors with rates, et cetera. Now we can drive in deep. We understand what their ADR is for the year, what their occupancy is for the year, what their rates are consistently. We kind of have all that data, but if you don't, there's still ways, and you really want to, that opportunity revenue, which we segued into, is so critical for your success. Raising rate on some dates, 10%, 15%, you can actually take that to the bank. So doing things like that are very important in the vacation rental business today.
Yeah, you mentioned comp sets. I think that's something that's really important, because like if we're not measuring how we're doing compared to similar listings in our marketplace, if we don't measure it, then we also can't learn if our strategies are working, right? So it's really important. So like when it comes to the comp set, you mentioned like we have to compare apples to apples, right? Now, is that easier in the hotel industry? Because I just imagine if you have, hotel rooms are maybe a little bit more similar. Like every short-term rental is unique, right?
So much more easier in hotels. You got like 5 or 4 hotels. You call the hotel, ask for a site visit. You look at the hotel, you look at the unit. Similar 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. Well, not many even have 3 bedrooms. A lot of properties, maybe a couple suites, but it's really easy, right? Setting up comp sets, and I tell our franchises and our team members, should be a really, really strategic process that takes a lot of time. But once you set them up, it becomes easy because you review every quarter, you're looking at comp sets. But it's really important to make sure you have true competitors. Now, length of stay, for example, you don't want to have competitors that, you're having a 2-night length of stay and they have a 5-night or a 1-night or even a 30-day night, some property, you don't want to look at competitors like that. You want to get them out of there right away. But you really want to understand that these competitors are showing up with impressions with your property. So the more likelihood they're going to be comparing you to those, the potential guest is going to be comparing you to those properties. So it's very important you set that comp set up. And what we do, our system's really good for some locations. We have comp sets that interface with our PMS system that we can put, based on periods of, dates. We can say, well, we want the rate minus 10% of the competition plus 10%. And we can do a lot of things with that. That's pretty strategic, but, we were really big on consulting with our PMS team to really come up with comp set pricing, which is an ideal way to price today in the marketplace, along with, like your market-based pricing tools.
Right. So, okay. So it's really important for us. Most of the pricing algorithms that people use, like Price Labs and Wheelhouse and Beyond, and there's a few others, most of them have, pretty customizable comp set technology, right? So we can actually tell the tool like, hey, these are the listings that we want to compare to. One thing that I think is important too is like thinking about the amount of properties that we put in our comp set, right? Because if we have too few, then the data is not really going to be reliable, right? So if I have, let's just say I have a short-term rental in the market, let's say there's 1,000 listings in the market. I have a pretty standard, 2-bedroom. and there's another 200 2 bedrooms, but they're kind of in different neighborhoods in the town. Like, how many? What kind of number should I go for? Like, how
Great
big should that
question.
comp set be?
Yep. Yep. So great question. So I have a strategy and process I, put together based on my experience, the technology I have, and just general knowledge, right, to get what I believe could be a good comp set. So at minimum, you want to have around 5 properties at the minimum. And again, you got to check for outliers. So what I mean by outliers is that what I mentioned earlier with the length of stay, but also if they're overpriced, or if they're statically priced all the time, right? So, maybe you do that with a static price, but you probably wouldn't want a property in your comp set that's overpriced, because now it's going to dilute your data that you're analyzing. So I would encourage you to really look at the pricing, for 4 6 months, et cetera, along with 5 properties, and then you could go up to 20 to 25. You don't really need 30. You start getting an extreme level when you go up. Now, what we also look at is the comp sets, but we look at different management companies' pricing. So we'll put some of the other larger management companies, or even smaller if it's a smaller destination, into our comp sets so we can evaluate what those management companies are doing. We're looking kind of like what their trends and strategy are. Are they looking at booking windows really closely? Because we're big on booking windows, 90, 120, really owning that real estate. And then a lot of different management companies, a lot of novice revenue managers forget about 120 days out all the way to 30. They start dropping 30 days out. If they would have dropped a little bit, 90, 120 maybe, they only would have had to drop 4 or 5%, but now they're dropping 25% to 30%. Back to opportunity revenue, just lost X amount of revenue. So things like that play a pivotal role in how you do this.
Mm. Yeah, because I was creating a comp set for one of our clients, and I noticed like there was a couple of properties in his marketplace that were very close and very similar in size
Yeah.
and everything, but then their price, their ADR was just so much higher, right?
Yeah.
And so I looked at the listing and I realized, oh, this is like a really beautifully designed A-frame with like high-end furniture, right?
Sure.
So like if we find something like that, we don't really want to include
Yeah,
those type of
absolutely.
listings, even though they're same size, same location, but they're just a different experience.
Yeah, because then your strategy's off. Then what the last thing you want to do is have a strategy that's wrong. And I'll see, from my experience, I can see things pretty quickly just because I have the experience. Anybody with it, it's not that I know more than people. I just got a lot of experience in revenue. I can see strategies off right away, and that will mess you up for a whole year or longer. One thing we also look at that I forgot to mention is, our review, rating compared to the competition rating. We want to kind of keep it, 0.5 per, 0.5, difference. We don't want to have a 5 compared to, we have a 4 on our property, because you're not really measuring numbers correctly, or the other way around. So it's really important to make sure you have all that information before you really say, okay, they're going to be a competitor I really want to watch. And that's what I mentioned earlier, Jasper. It takes time to set these comp sets up. If you do it not correctly, your strategy's off then. And then that's going to
Mhm.
affect you for the year in revenue.
So let's talk about strategy now. Right? Obviously, that's very important, but I think a lot of hosts are maybe a little confused of like, okay, well, you go into your pricing app and you set base price, you look at your comp set, you look at other listings, and you see, oh, okay, similar listings are charging around 200, a little higher in the weekends, a little lower in the low season, like all of that stuff. But then, like, how do you actually define a strategy? Like, where do we start with that?
Well, you want to try to be, you don't want to really be a follower, okay? You want to be a leader when it comes to that, even though you might be under lower price than them. So you just really can't count on a comp set. You really have to evaluate. First, it goes with your 365 rates, right? We call those base rates, seasonal rates. So you have different seasons throughout the year if that's how you price. And you really want to put that down on Excel sheet, paper. Don't go right in your Airbnb portal, or really, again, it goes back to strategy, having that on paper or whatever tool you need to utilize, and really look at the 365, right? Really analyze your history from year prior. How many rooms were occupied per month, and then what were your rates? Now, uh, if you're occupied in June, July, 30 days, all month, then one of the general rules is people say, "Hey, I'm just going to raise my rates 10% next year, 365, and leave it," right? Well, that doesn't really. It's more by month, right? So you can't generalize and say 10% all across the board. And that goes with you really analyzing your last year's history, to see. Now, you can also look at when they booked. Okay, so what was and it goes back to booking window. When did they book? If it was short term and you knew that you lowered the rate, in our system, again, of course, we can see what was lowered, what was not. And you had to lower the rate to get the booking, to get the 25 or 30 days, then maybe you don't raise your rates for next year. Maybe you keep them there because you don't want to be lowering your rates 25% again. You're repeating the same thing over and over again. And you just can't do that in our industry. So you really want to look at, by month, how many, rooms you were occupied by month. Did you have to drop rate late? Did you have to, what was your strategy throughout it? And then, you look at your busiest time dates, right? And you really want to lead there. You want to just beat everybody big time. You want to own those dates, right? And you start there. With your rates being maybe higher than your competition, knowing that everyone sells out anyway. You might have a larger length of stay with some length of stay pricing going on. So again, it goes back to really, you have your busy dates, have those down, look at your other months, analyze, and then analyze your competition on what their rates, are for next year. Now, a lot of the competition you guys might be looking at might not be as detailed as some of our management companies that have different, real different strategies. But again, it goes back to then breaking down your booking windows. We break it down really strategic. You might not have to, or it takes time. We go from 365 to 240 to 100, 180, 120. And all those dates, we are really analyzing pricing. We're analyzing pickup. We're analyzing the market. Is it up year over year? If it's down year over year, what's the trend? So what we saw this summer in a lot of locations, I'm not going to pick on the location, but it was mostly coastal. Last year we knew that 33% of bookings came within 14 days of arrival. Okay, so that was one thing. Now we're seeing that actually even go up. Now, at the first of the year, it was declining, or it was increasing. Now then it started to decrease. So that is something that, softballs come at you all the time in our business. You have to react. You can't, again, set it and forget it, right? So what we saw a lot of, in coastal markets, overall markets, were running like 88, 89% occupancy for this year. Last year they ran 81, 82, but the rate was down $40 to $70. Okay, where overall your RevPAR was down year over year, so you lost money. Okay, so this is a lot of locations did this. not one management company, it was a lot of locations. So they didn't anticipate the short-term demand coming in. So what they were seeing, 9120 pace was down, less overreact. Okay. Looking at trends, maybe that wasn't the right, well, it wasn't the right decision. So I think there was an overreaction in rates. So um, you have to really be able to understand your market, where pace is going, where pickup is going, and sometimes you have to take chances. You know, we have a tendency to drop rate uh, pretty quickly in some markets. That's easy to do, but remember, when you're dropping rate, you're dropping revenue. You're conceding revenue for those days. So you got to be real careful with it. And then, like I said, that's where it goes back to, your 90 to 120, you're making decisions then on, do I price up? Do I price down? Do I take price down? There's all this going on that you're looking even for these trends. Now, in May, like I said, the first of the year, it was, that 30, 14 days, it was actually increasing, 20 days, it was going up. But then in May, we saw it go down. Okay. So, researching, your May trends, your booking window trends there might have helped some of that offset rate loss from this coastal market.
So you're saying that you saw that like basically more people were starting to book in the last like 15 days, but then
Good
later
question,
it
Jess.
went
It
down.
wasn't really 15 days. It was like the 30 to 60-day window, okay? And the 15 days, right? But, that 30, 60 window trend we saw last year for this coastal market. We reacted a lot different. We did really well. We grew year over year. But the trend was happening last year. Now, people were wanting to book even 30, 60, 90 days out in some ways, but they were full or something. So really being, really going back to really understanding how pace is trending, how the market's trending, and don't overreact too and dropping rate, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. So, so this is an important part of revenue management, is understanding predicting when are people going to book, right? Is it 50 days out or 30 days out, or half of the people book 60 days out, then. So let's take a concrete example, right? So let's say in a particular market, you see that last year, 50% of people booked, 60 days out or more, right? So then does that mean that if we're 60 days out, I should be roughly, like for half booked for my units at the 60-day mark?
Um, Good question. Now, again, if it's trending, okay, go back just for a moment. Booking windows change for room types. So I want to be clear with your audience that, the 4 or 5 bedrooms, if you have the bigger homes, your window is a lot different. Okay. If you're going to 30 days without it booked, that's going to be hard to get it booked, right? Or you may have, you know, your window's that clearly 90 to 120, right? You need to be booking there. I mean, you live in those days, right? When you're in, like, pace wise, if you're into what we mentioned, if you're 50% booked 60 days out, um, it could go both ways. So what are your competitors? What are they booked at occupancy wise, on those, 60 days out? So you're reviewing what the trends are in occupancy, and you could get that a lot of ways. Airbnb, Verbo, you can get AirDNA. There's a lot of ways of getting that data. We have other tools, but seeing what those trends are, and then understanding what is getting booked, right? So If it's the luxury, so we break it down. You want to break your properties down too, right? So you got budget, you got economy, you got mid scale, you got upper scale, you got upper upscale, you got luxury. So those are broken down, and you kind of really want to look at those. Like, well, is all luxury being booked right now? What segment is being booked out of those? And then you want to come up with a decision on, do I hold my rate, or do I discount a little bit or discount more than a little bit, or do I hold my rate knowing that I'm seeing these trends? I saw May decrease. I'm seeing these trends that are signaling that I should be okay here. Again, if you use length of stay pricing, which I very much encourage you, with Hilton, I was, we were started length of stay pricing. It goes a long way, and how you strategize, and we could probably go into detail a little bit more, but you could always, make some length of stay changes too, on that 60 window, instead of dropping all the way. But there's always got to be analyzing and understanding where your market's going, also understanding what the supply is in the market. Too many times I see, um, revenue managers not understanding their supply. Um, and, when a market, and we saw this, we knew that supply went up 28% overall last year, right? Now we had an estimate that with home prices and interest rates, et cetera, we were looking at supply dropping, 10 to 12% for the year. Well, it really hasn't dropped that much. Okay. So if you have new supply coming to your market, that is a definite radar for you. And if it's supply that is your same bedroom type, that is huge for you. Okay. Because now demand has to outpace supply by X. And if you're seeing trends that demand slowing down, then that's a big factor. So in so many markets, we have seen supply grow 50, 100%. And that strategy has to change because you have so much more in the marketplace. For example, we're in Arizona and Phoenix, Scottsdale. We knew that 2 years ago, supply was around 7,000 properties in Phoenix. Today, it's 14,000. Okay, it's a lot more properties. We acted differently for Super Bowl. We had the Super Bowl in Phoenix this year. We acted differently than any of our competitors did for Super Bowl. We knew that with 14,000, 7,000 more rentals based on the bedroom types, etc., and the hotel inventory based on our history from last year's Super Bowl, that we have to be somewhat aggressive. We can't do 7-night minimums for Super Bowl, even though there was a huge golf tournament over the same dates. We have to shrink that down. We have to get that out to ownership, letting them know that here's our strategy. Here's what we believe. Here's our processes. Here's what we're going to do, and set with it. Now, all our properties sold out, and we did really good over Super Bowl. But vacation rentals over Super Bowl ran about 45% occupancy. So that's just an example of how we anticipated all that new supply affecting demand. And then if the supply is coming in with the same length of stay as you and everything, it just plays a pivotal role. That's when you really have to adapt to pricing changes.
Right. Right. So the Super Bowl is a good example, right? Because people, most people think, oh, the Super Bowl's coming. We can increase our rates. Everyone jacks up the rates for that period of time. And then, half the people don't get booked because you mentioned there's so much more supply. And then everyone's panicking in the last couple of weeks and, dropping prices.
Rates so much.
So in that,
I had
that
so
example,
much heat from owners, but they were so not understanding, we would take, why are we 20% lower than our competitors, 25%? And some owners didn't want to go to where we needed to go, and they didn't fill. And, but if you really understand what's happening and have confidence in it, you're going to have to make some tough decisions sometimes. You're going to have to take chances. Now, that's a chance we won at, but there's chances we've lost at too. But that's just one example of, how the market trends. Now, Jasper, now Christmas is different too. Christmas, in the last few years, we've seen a trend change on Christmas, right? In the last 4 or 5 years, you know, so there's two waves with Christmas in a lot of markets, not every market, believe me. So I don't want you to think your market's what I'm generalizing a little bit here. So I don't want you to think, oh, wow, I got to do this on our market, but you have to look at different things to come up with these strategies. So we look at it two ways. So Christmas comes in the 21st to the 31st. That's your wave. Now, we see a lot of times our competitors are pricing the same, the 21st all the way to the 31st. A length of stay is the same, everything's the same. What we've seen in the last few years, it's really two waves. Actually, it goes the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, peaks a little bit, and then it goes down, like a wave, goes down a little bit, the 25th, and maybe the 26th a little bit. You'll have arrivals coming to the 26th. A lot of people today want to be home, okay, for Christmas. That it's a big deal for them to be home. Depending on airline flights, and that's another thing you want to be looking at for your market, cost-wise on flights, unless you're a drive market. So that second wave, we know is going to be bigger than the 27th through the 31st. So we understand that now our rates need to be, X amount higher, process strategy, length of stay, everything has to be set up that way. If you have it flatline, you're going to get a lot of price resistance on that first wave into second, which we see a lot of times. So we're looking at markets and we're seeing competitors always flatlining that. So I would encourage you to look at your market and make sure, just kind of like with Super Bowl. Now, again, it goes back to supply. If there's a lot more supply in the market than there was last year, you have to take that in consideration. But a lot of markets, not all markets, believe me, but that 27th, 31st is a huge demand. So demand, even with new supply, has a tendency to outpace supply.
Mm-hmm. What to wrap up this podcast? Like, what would you say? What would you say are like the biggest mistakes that hosts generally make? I'm talking, let's say, like smaller hosts, like let's say 1 to 25 properties.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a little bit about some of it. I think length of stay pricing is huge. Anytime we incorporate length of stay pricing with franchisors we see a 20%, 30% increase in revenue. With Hilton, when we started length of stay pricing over the brand for the first year, was like 18%. We rolled it out and it was very successful. Hilton has like a revenue management university that you have to go to. Is very hard. It's 2 weeks. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do not pass it. They cannot be a revenue manager for Hilton. But it's all about this length of stay pricing strategies and everything. So, we see in a lot of tools today, we see, people pricing 1 through 7 the same. But the value for a 5-night customer compared to 2, it has more value to you. So why have them at the same price points, right? Your ideal situation, and in a lot of markets, our length of stay, again, we can see competitors, we judge this, is 5.9, our average is 5.94 in locations compared to 4.6 and with length of stay, and then our rate is about 20% higher too. So making sure, whatever tools you have, you can do some length of stay pricing, big time strategy pricing when it comes to it. So what we like to do is, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's different price points. And what that allows you to do is there's demand, believe it or not, the highest demand might be for the 2 nights, right? That might be 70%, let's just say, for a 2-night stay at a location. Then it goes down to maybe 15% for, 3 nights, or maybe 20. 10% for 4, 5% for 5, and then it goes down to 7, you get a percent that people are looking for. You want to make sure you have price points for all those. So for the whole entire month with RevPAR, your goal, when you see your calendar, you have 1 7-night stay, 2 5-night stays, 1 4-night stay, 3 2-night stays. So over the whole month, your RevPAR is going to be higher than your competition because you outperformed them in length of stay. Our industry is not really big in the length of stay yet. Yeah, I hope they can be, but really yet. A lot of the pricing tools out there and everything looks at one nights, etc. A lot of the pricing tools that are out there, like Wheelhouse and some of that, are getting really good at some of this stuff. But as they keep going, you want to be, again, ahead of the game. So coming up with a great length of stay pricing strategy is really important. Don't just have a weekly, monthly, put 5% off or something like that. Understand, what your strategy is. And then look at your competition for weekly. What are you for the one night stay? What are they? So you want to make sure you're priced accordingly, where what we call probability factors of being able to book. If you're priced at X, maybe you want to be 60% probability factor of being booked at X. If you're at X higher, your probability factor goes down to 40%. So on those what we just talked about, your value for that customer is a lot more. So make sure you have a probability factor for those higher length of stay pricing for you. And that would be the
So
biggest thing. I look at so many listings, Jasper. This is really not revenue management related, but the photos and you talk about this constantly. But I look at so many because I have to look at competitors. But the photos and your descriptions and making sure your seasons change with your photos and description and all that stuff plays a pivotal role in how you price. And you might want to come up with, I'm saying Airbnb, but a last minute discount or early bird, so you're getting some slash through, et cetera, through that will also help you with this. But really, the one take home thing is really, if you put it on a document or whatever, is have your 365 strategy all, ready to go, months in advance before you hit, and have that set up. Now you're going to have to react to that consistently, but understanding that and knowing that and have goals, for each month would be
mhm.
good.
So when you say length of stay pricing, you basically mean that if for a 2 night stay we should be charging a higher price than for a 3 night stay, or the longer the stay, the lower the daily
Yeah,
rate should be, is what you're saying, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because your demand goes down based on length of stay. Your demand for searches goes down based on that. So just think of length of stay as your occupancy pace for a market, right? Because your 3 nights going to not, if you're forecasting a 70% occupancy on a 2 night, that might be 55%. So you want to be more competitive and have a good
Mhm.
strategy. Now, what we do, we have the technology to do it, like say for Christmas or other holiday dates. Let's just say we want a 3 on the house, right? Now, on some holidays, we might not sell out. We might. We'll have a 2 on there, but it's at 70% higher rate than for the 3. So you can even take the rate up more. Now you're getting more hits on demand, and then maybe you can gap manage out of the rest of that time frame to be really successful and get even a higher rate in
Mhm.
revenue. But yet, length of stay, we have so many different, uh, we call those length of stay maps, that we have maps for periods with all types of different strategies that play a pivotal role. It takes time to do it, but your revenue will increase dramatically. And that goes back to your opportunity revenue you didn't even know you had, that's just little things you could do to be successful.
Yeah. Awesome, Tom. I appreciate your sharing your wisdom today on the podcast here. Before I let you go, if people are interested in learning more about Casago, where can they go?
Yeah, great. So we have franchises too. So smaller companies, even, if you have 5, 10, properties or more, if you're even larger company, we offer all support revenue, from revenue to housekeeping to marketing to owner acquisition, et cetera. That could be really beneficial for you. The best way to find us is on www.casago.com.
Awesome. Sweet. Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Appreciate you
Jasper.
taking the time here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Alrighty. And to the listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode, another one on this topic of revenue management. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.